What would you say if you knew that if you got struck by lightning, you would intensify all of your psychic powers to your highest human self like that? Would you say yes or no?
So I survive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Orphic. My name is Alyssa. I'm an astrophysicist. I have my PhD, and I am keen on understanding the consciousness of the universe and the consciousness of astrophysics. Essentially, all celestial bodies have souls. I'm actually going to talk about that today, which I'm excited about. But the universe is very much alive and conscious. And so what I want to do is understand how that works and how we can expand the current astrophysics to basically encompass all of spirituality. And science and spirit are not separate at all, not even the slightest. So it's kind of funny that people think that they are, because they're not. So I want to explore that in a astrophysical realm. So follow me on Instagram at interdimensional.astrophysics. Thanks. Hi.
Hey, I'm Mikayla with Mariposa Moonchild on Instagram. So please call me there, or please follow me there. please call me there.
Call her too.
Oh, this is funny. I think it's like maybe like an overtiredness today, you know, when you're just like overtired, so you're just a little like delusional.
I have a little bit of that Delulu energy going on today too.
Delulu, yeah. Delulu. So maybe something
That's
is
what
in
the
air,
TikTokers are calling it, Delulu.
Delulu.
I like it.
Of that. Anyways, if you want to call me, go ahead, or follow me on Instagram. I do empathic energy medicine and shadow alchemy over there. So part of my mission and part of my work is to be part of the ripple effect of healing across the planet as we raise our consciousness. I believe we're moving into a new paradigm, a new era, a higher frequency of Mother Earth. And in order to do that, there's some healing to do with the earth, with the land, with the animals, and with ourselves. And the first step is taking that initiative to do the inner work. And so that's what I do through my shadow alchemy and the energetics through the empathic energy medicine. So check out my page if you want to work with me. I'm taking on one-on-one mentorships right now. I have a few spots opened for that. So if you're interested and feel resonant with that, just check out my page and send me a message.
Nice. I figured I forgot to also mention that I will be starting psychic services soon, probably most likely under the category of like intuitive guidance, things like that. So just keep an ear out for that. Not starting exactly yet, but just want to mention that. So
cool.
Let's all right. So, all right, let's ground in.
Oh yeah, right. Also, Alyssa and I have not recorded for a very long time.
I know.
It's just the way it's worked out. All right, everyone, I'm going to light my Palo Santo, and I'd like you to receive that however you would like to. I personally am going to close my eyes. And yeah.
Samesies.
Okay. Let's take a couple of deep cleansing breaths. Let's breathe that Palo Santo deep into your body, deep into your heart. Big breath in. Filling your lungs all the way to the top and pausing here. When you're ready, opening your mouth, letting out a sigh, letting it go. Another big breath in. Filling your lungs all the way to the top. Pausing here, feeling your heart beating, feeling the blood running through your veins. Then let it go. Releasing anything that feels heavy, anything that may be weighing you down, releasing it with the breath. One more big breath in, filling your lungs. pausing, feeling into your heart, and letting it go, release. And gently bring yourself back into this space.
That was nice and necessary for me because I've definitely not been doing much deep meditation lately, or just like you too, right? We're both a little like nervous system dysregulated of late, but I feel like that's like I was just going to blame it on summer. Oh, it's a summer thing.
Yeah,
sure.
It's been a lot lately. I have meditated a bit today, but up until that point, I hadn't been doing my practice at all. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely feel it. Like yesterday, my power went out. My phone broke, like completely broke, completely unusable, like completely black screen. And there's like a thunderstorm and all this stuff. I just found it interesting because someone said to me like, oh, it feels like you're like affecting the electricity. And she's like, do you feel frazzled? I'm like, yeah, I feel very frazzled. And then we were in a thunderstorm too, and it was like lightning. And like, okay, I don't want to like perpetuate fear because this is my own thing, but I'm kind of afraid of lightning.
Oh my God, dude, we had the craziest storm. Sorry, not to like override your storm story.
Whatever.
But I didn't even we like a few weeks ago, we had the craziest storm. The sky looked like a strobe light. Like it was just the craziest, like constant lightning. And it just reminded me of that. I don't think I told you about that. But all to say, I agree with you. Lightning is scary as fuck.
Yeah, like, but I never used to feel like that. Like, I personally actually really love storms. Like, growing up in Alberta, we would get really crazy storms, like really loud, like thunder and lightning and big storms. Because, like, out on the plains is kind of where tornadoes and stuff can happen. And I would love a good summer storm, like just hot day and this like scary black storm rolls in. And we don't really get the storms like that out here. So it's like kind of weird. It's thunderstormed 2 days in a row out here, but the rain is really good. But the being afraid of lightning thing has been something that's been new to me in the last couple years. And I almost don't even really want to speak to it because I don't want to like manifest it or like speak about it. So I'm going to cancel clear. But I don't know. In the last couple of years, it's almost like I have this weird premonition that I'm like, gonna get hit by it or something. Like, okay, cancel clear because it's not a premonition, but like I don't know, it's like, and I don't know if it's because I've become more sensitive, but it's like I can feel it in the air, like I can feel it, and I'm just like, I don't know, like it just like kind of freaks me out because then I'm like, am I this like person where it's gonna like zap me or something, and then all of a sudden I'm like maxed out my spiritual powers and it like came to me this way, but in order for that to happen I had to get like struck by the lightning or I have some kind of magnetic force that like attracts it. Cancel clear, because it's not going to happen. But I've never felt like this when I was younger. It's only been a thing that's happened in the last couple of years, and now it's like if it's lightning, like I like to watch it, but I stay in my house and like I'm not going under any trees, I'm not doing anything silly.
I feel like it's a sensitivity thing. I feel like your sensitivity has raised, and there's so much with the weather. And I've talked about this before on episodes, like the weather, and especially just with the like just physically with the ions and what's in the air. Like it makes complete sense that we would have these like reactions, or that there could be this extreme sensitivity to things like that, especially if you're so like intuitive and like, and I don't know, like actually I don't really know that much of the science of like what happens when it's lightning, but I imagine the air is super charged and it's like, oh,
well, it would be, because I mean it's straight electricity, but and like I also live on a mountain, and like lightning has started fires around us like in the last couple of days too, so because right now, like for anyone that doesn't know, I'm out in BC, Canada, and the wildfires are pretty bad right now. I mean, again, cancel clear, not feeding into that narrative, but yeah, it's been interesting.
They're definitely there, and they're definitely like actively destroying things. So it's just true.
Like we left for a couple days and we're home again now, but we're on evacuation alert. And 2 years ago, a wildfire came through and Bryce and I were evacuated for 2 months. And it like took out a pretty large portion of our community, like at least 80 homes. 3 of our neighbors' homes were gone, burnt to the ground. And our shed in our backyard burnt to the ground. But there was like, it was so interesting because in our backyard, there was like this almost like, it wasn't even almost, this like clean cut line of where the grass had burnt, and it was just dead grass that was burnt and black. And on the other side of that line, the grass was super bright green and lush, and it was just like a line. I think it had maybe been, my guess is like from a hose that had been placed there by the firefighters or whatever. And like kind of the hose held in the water on one side, and then it had burnt up and like it burnt our shed and up into that point. But crazy. So yeah, I've lived through this before. So the fact that it's like around our community again is like, it's been a little unnerving. I feel a lot grounded and a lot better today, and I actually feel pretty safe now. But a few nights ago, the wind, there's flying embers going across the lake, and the winds were pretty high, and we started to see the glow come over the mountain, and yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. No, and especially like when that's happened, like literally the house across from you burned down 2 years ago.
3 of them across from us.
Yeah, right. So,
but I mean, actually, I have 2 things to say on that. Back to the lightning thing. I wanted to say though, like, okay, because like a person getting hit by lightning, like the chances of it, I think are really, really slim. Like, I don't know what it is, but if you look it up, I think it's like, it's really, really slim. But then what I find so interesting is some people are like more like susceptible to get hit by lightning than others.
Really?
And some people get hit multiple times.
And it's like, is there a reason that they're more susceptible?
I don't know. And so that leads me, and so my thought leads me to believe it has to be something with the magnetic field of their body or their aura. And then that's where I get like overthinking about it. I'm like, what's in my aura? Don't come near me. Like, we walked Osa yesterday and it started pouring rain, and we're in the pouring rain, which I didn't mind. But then it starts like thundering and like lightning. Well, because you mean thunder is lightning. And then I'm just like, oh shit. And then like I have these intrusive thoughts and I'm like, no, like trying to push the thoughts away, but I have the intrusive thoughts. So I'm like, aura of rubber, like running back to the car. I'm like, fuck.
Yo,
like I'm fine. Obviously, I'm powerful, but
yeah. That's really crazy though, that about like the people that are more susceptible to lightning and how it probably, I don't know, like if it's like a soul contract or that combined with something in their magnetic field, but like that would make sense, I guess. I don't know.
Because there's some people that have been hit by lightning like 10 times in their life. It seeks them out. It like knows. What? But then I think, yeah, I know. It's like, see, it's scary. Okay, we're not perpetuating fear. It's not scary, but like, what the fuck?
I mean, listen, I'm sure that everyone has like a little bit of a fear of getting struck by lightning, so it's fine.
I didn't when I was a child. It was only like the last like couple years that I don't know. And I'm not really like that. Like, I don't really have fear. Like, I'm not really afraid of like, I don't know. It's like some people are like really afraid of like bears and wildlife and like out hiking. And like, I'm not afraid of those types of things and stuff. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know. It's weird. But then for when it happens over and over for somebody, I think it's also this thing of like, once it's happened once, I think maybe they're even more susceptible to it because there's some type of like electrical charge like in their body or something. But I'm just like, could you imagine being on this earth and you get struck by lightning 10 times? Not even once? Fuck that. Fuck that. That's not, no thank you. No thank you, ma'am. But then again, what would you say if you knew that if you got struck by lightning, you would intensify all of your psychic powers to your highest human self like that? Would you say yes or no?
So I survive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'm so scared. I don't even think I would. Fuck that.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I would do it.
And then you're just like, for the rest of your life, someone turns on the microwave and you're like, like, fuck. I don't know, man. I don't know. And then this is also just like Mother Earth. She's powerful. How does lightning even, what is lightning? How does that even exist? Like, what is that?
Good question.
What is it? It's just, and it's also just like
rapid pressure changes causing rapid electric clashes. I don't know.
Science girl.
I don't know. That was my guess, honestly.
No, you would know. I have no idea. Like it's some type of electrical guess. Something in the air. Yeah. But that's also an interesting thing too. Isn't it crazy how like, again, we're like these humans, whatever that means. I've been thinking about that lately too. Like been really tapping into my soul and my consciousness. This was kind of like something I was thinking about the other day when I went to bed. When I was thinking about how when I was young, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words, but I like really felt into my soul and my consciousness before, you get all the programming, the conditioning. Cause I remember being really young, like really young child, like maybe 5, 6 years old. And I remember just like laying down and closing my eyes and putting my hands like this and kind of just going into the vastness of like the womb, let's call it, like the blackness. Mm-hmm. And I would really kind of, I don't want to say fuck myself up, but I would really get my mind going where I'm just like, who am I? Who am I? And I would keep going. And then like, I don't know, like, have you ever done that before? I don't know how to explain it or like put it into words, but all of a sudden everything around you becomes really weird. You're like, how is this consciousness existing in this body right now? Like, do you know what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. And it's funny because the podcast that I just did, that was out last week, we kind of talked about that, or talked about like having those like weird existential moments like in childhood. And I very specifically remember these like few nights where for me, it was more about like what happens when we die, or more about like the concept of like nothing existing after you die. And I feel like this is probably like a like a catalyst. I mean, this was when I was pretty young though, like before a spiritual awakening, but obviously it was like some important step, for me to like learn that you don't truly die. But like, yeah, having those like really extreme thoughts of like, it would be like, what would it even be like for nothing to exist, or like, me to stop existing after this. And I would like zone out and like stare at one thing in my room when I must have been like 10 or 12 or something. And I would like zone out one thing in my room and I would like freak the fuck out. And it sounds like kind of similar to that. Yeah. I think a lot of people have that.
I think it's
it's
very
like you're
similar
coming to
that
consciousness moment. Yeah.
Because I would like kind of stare at something too, or just like zone out, like depending what it was, and just like go deep into thought. And then you're just like, but it's weird because you almost like separate yourself, or not even separate, but individualize yourself as just like your pure consciousness in that moment, like separate from your body and everything else. And you're just like, what is this? Because you are just in this experience right now. And because of our amnesia, we can only relate to our experience right now. But like, I've even had those thoughts recently too, like having a conversation with Bryce, or as recently with my mom and sister. And I'm like, everything is from my perspective and how I see it. And I can only see it through my eyes. Like I can't even see what myself looks like besides looking in a mirror, which isn't the same. And I'm like, but they're having the same experiences in their body. And like, why am I not having the experience in their body, or simultaneously like experience it at all? Or why am I in this body and not that body? And it's like just weird how we're all having these experiences, like our consciousness are having these experiences in these different ways. It's just weird because I'm just like, why am I me and I'm not my sister?
That's a good question. Or like, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, or like, like individualizing consciousness in that way of like, whoa, my sister's there and I'm here, but like I can only be inside of me, and she can only be inside of her brain. So it's like, oh, it's so weird.
Or even with Bryce, because it's just like we have a really high level of comfortability, I'd say. And it's like, I just feel like my life is so entangled with him. Like, this is our life and it just feels like it's my life. But then I'm like, but through his lens, it's his life. And it's like, and he's seeing me through his eyes, and it's completely different. Like, he has his own thoughts, and it's not, even though I create my reality as my reality and he fits into it here, but his is being projected a different way. And it's just, I don't know. It's crazy. It really has me thinking.
I also too think about how like I don't know if like we will ever like truly understand like what it was like to be a different person incarnated on a different planet or something like that. You know, it's like, because there is such a veil of forgetfulness here that like, I don't know the extent of realization that you can actually like remove yourself from this reality, because I think that we think that we can, and we can know that we resonate with other beings or like resonate with like being other things. But there's still like, we are still like, the silver cord is attached. Like, we're still incarnated so long as we're alive. And I think that there's a certain extent that you never really get separated from this illusion in a way. I don't know. I just have thought about that too. Like, while we're in this earth container, it's like what you were saying, like we're only experiencing like what it's like to be us.
Yeah. I don't even really know where I was going with that, but
deep.
Yeah, deep. So, what's up with you?
So what's up? Yeah, so this is our first time recording again since we were recording in person when I was over there.
It's been a long time.
Canada. I know, it's been about a month.
But I sound a lot better and should be minimal to no coughing.
Less coughing today, so that's good. But yeah, it's been nice. I do like really miss Banff and that area. And so yeah, like for today I want to talk a bit about my my time in Canada, and especially my time at the ranch, and kind of what I felt from there. But yeah, like Banff was just so amazing, and it is an energetic vortex of sorts, which would mean that the ley lines of the earth, I don't know how much we like talked about this on the earth and the grid lines and the ley lines, but essentially I guess the way that I understand it is that I think this kind of has to do with some other, I don't know, now I'm just like doing that thing where I just get into like a spiral of all the thoughts about how earth is not symmetrical, or I don't think I'm trying to understand the energetics of the energetics and like the science of the interior of the earth. And because like there are chakras that the earth has, and there's motion of energy, and as a result there's like intersection points, like just how chakras in a way kind of like, I don't know, or these like there's these energetic lines that like weave in and out and create these amplified regions of energy on earth. And many people might know that Sedona is a pretty popular or well-known energy vortex, which I would say a vortex kind of just maybe is like an amplifier of energy in certain regions. And anyway, I mean, yeah, just kind of like some of the background info for like why energetic vortexes would exist is because of like the earth has an energetic circuitry just like we do. Like there's some circuitry of the way that energy is flowing within planets. Oh, that's interesting because I want to talk about planets today too. So anyway, there's an energetic vortex in Banff, and you can so feel it, and it feels like the mountains are like protecting you and watching over you, and they're just there. And I also sort of had like a bunch of downloads about mountains and like me. And so I was there with my sister and brother-in-law, Jackie and Brandon, and they're both, super spiritual and love talking about all this stuff too. And so it's kind of fun because while I'm around people that I'll like have a download and we can like talk it out, and I'll be like, so I remember like being like, I wonder like what the consciousness of mountains are. And then I was almost having this feeling like there is some I don't want to say the word hierarchy because it's not better, but then I was thinking about like the consciousness of different land masses and everything, and just different, like literally nature and just land. And I was like wondering if there's something to elevation such that like land masses, like obviously there's a different consciousness to like a mountain versus like a valley. Like there has to be. Also the physics around there, like I don't know. And I was almost getting this feeling like natural areas that are like elevated are like protectors of the land below it, like because it felt like the mountains were like overseeing the land below. And so I felt like, oh, maybe like the higher in elevation, it's kind of like this ecosystem such that these higher elevation lands are like the protectors, because they literally are, like they're surveying the land below them. Like
they are. I feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, also, don't forget that the mountains like supply the water to the valley and everything below.
Shit, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
good
because
point.
every spring, well, there's glaciers around there, but then there, you know, like it snows, and every spring the water on top of the mountains melts, or the snow melts, and it feeds all of the streams and waterfalls all the way down into the valley, into the rivers and into the lakes. And then that, I mean, yeah, like that's where pretty much all of our water is like coming from. Because then if you go past Banff a little bit, I don't know if you guys would have drove through it, but I don't know if you want to seen it. In Canada, there's the Continental Divide, which is really interesting because the Continental Divide is in the mountains, and where the Continental Divide is at that point, if you drop a glass of water, some of it goes out to the west and the rest of it goes out to the east. So that's the divide, where the water flowing to the east after that all goes to the east, all the way across the country to the east. And the water to the west goes all the way across the country to the west, to both oceans. And the Continental Divide is in BC somewhere at the top of the mountains, because it goes down the mountains and flows out. So
splitting. It's like the node, like a node point. Yeah, because then it's like the mountain, then there's like the peaks of the mountain, which is where things separate in a way. And yeah, it's just super interesting. I was just having all of these thoughts about the significance of elevation for nature, and kind of what it means, mainly in the relationship from like between different things, like how each piece of like nature interacts, like what their purpose is with each other. And so Banff is it's so magical and so beautiful. And I remember like the first night that I was there, I sat on like kind of went out later at night, and the sun set at 10 when I was there, and it was like amazing. And so I would kind of go out after my sister put the kids to bed and everything. And the first night I was sitting by the river, and it was like the sun started coming out a little bit, so it started to get a bit green, and then I started seeing like the pretty blue color of that river that runs through Banff. And I was just like, oh my God, like I don't know if anything gets better than this. And I think I really hit like a bliss frequency moment, which was really nice. And another thing that kind of had occurred to me in the time that I was there was that like me being in that vortex of beauty and sharing that beauty like with the people around me that are genuine people in my life that won't be envious. And this is actually like a really important topic, because there's such thing as like sharing like the beauty that you're seeing, or sharing your beauty of your own life with other people, and it not being met with pure genuine like joy for you and for whatever it is. And I just feel like that happens a lot with like vacations, or when you're somewhere beautiful and you share. And I remember once, like I think maybe like some old temporary roommate I had said something about how like, and her therapist said something about how she's not trying to say like it's low vibrational to say like I'm jealous of like if you I mean, I don't know, maybe it is lower, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But she was saying that she's trying to not say like, oh, I'm jealous of like, oh, if you're at this place or if it's like so pretty, because you can also be, it's about like appreciating beauty from afar without you needing to experience it necessarily. And I just felt like I was sending, Snapchats to like my cousins or like my cousin group chat or stuff like this and showing them the beauty every time I would go and sit. And I felt like they were being uplifted from it too, and I just feel like it was cool that like me being at this beautiful place, it was uplifting me. And then I was able to share it with people in my life that I love, and they were able to like genuinely appreciate the beauty through me and not be like, oh, like I wish and like not have like a kind of like a visceral negative like jealousy reaction of it, just actually being able to say like, wow, that's beautiful, and appreciating it through the screen through me. And I just it was like this new realization of kind of like a ripple effect of sorts through that, like me being at this beautiful place was uplifting other people by sharing it and by sharing my experience there. So that was cool. And it was just, yeah, it was so beautiful. Was there something else I was going to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, Banff is really cool. It's ever since I was young, I was very fortunate enough to go like camping there and spend time there when I was a child too. And it's always been one of my favorite places. It's very cool.
It's just very like, I really like the town of Banff itself and Canmore, but there really is something very magical about it. And we kept on joking because like I kept on saying how I want to go back there, how I want to like come back. And then my sister Jackie it just became this running joke like, oh, it'll be so much better, Alyssa, when you come back instead of now. We kept on making this joke about how like I'm here now, like we appreciate it now. But then
I mean, that is a good point.
I know. But I don't know if I was like picking up on a future timeline or something, but I was just, because I want to come back in the winter too. And so I like, so then after that, like every other place we went, Jackie would be like, it'll be so much better in the winter. Yeah. And
too bad you don't ski or snowboard.
Yeah, I don't. So I would just look at the views. I would just look at the mountains. Don't do the winter sports. But what was it? Oh yeah, and we went swimming in Lake Louise. So Lake Louise is very cold, and
glacial
lakes. We went swimming. I went in for like 1 second and came out, but it was worth it, and it felt.
You only went in for 1 second?
Yeah.
You just like dunked yourself and got out?
Yes.
Oh, well, I was hoping you were gonna like breathe through for like 30 seconds or something.
That's
what I thought you did, to be honest.
You're like lame.
I feel duped.
You know what? Like I thought that it was I like as soon as I got in there, you could just like feel the effects like on your chest, and I think I like, or in your lungs. And I've never been in that cold water. I've never done like a true like ice bath plunge or some ice bath, I guess, whatever you would say.
Yeah.
And so there was, and then people were also like kind of smack talking, like jumping in, or I don't know, people are like, oh, it's like or I think maybe I heard somewhere through the grapevine, like, oh, like it's like, it's dangerous if you stay in there too long, which like, obviously I'm sure, I guess it is. But so I sort of freaked out. That's what happened. And I knew I wasn't going to like go swimming in there and hang out. I knew I was going to more or less go in and out. But when I got in and like the water was so cold and I started feeling like it in my chest, I was like, oh my God, am I going to die? And then I just got out, and I wasn't going to die. But then.
No, I mean, there's not like icebergs floating in there. You would have been fine. But it's your breathing. You have to learn how to breathe to regulate your body. And I learned this with Bryce and I. We started like kind of following Wim Hof. Check him out if anyone doesn't know who he is. And I learned breathing exercises and breath work through him that I would do when I was like in cold water that help, like, because at first, because it's super fucking cold, like for sure it's very cold, so your body goes into shock. That's the first reaction it does, and that's where it feels like in your chest we're like yes and you like can't handle it. We're like, am I gonna die? But then if you like do the breathing exercise and just like
that's what it was,
you tell your body that it's safe and your body calms down, and then you're actually able to like to sit in it.
So after I did mine, then like my brother-in-law did it, and then Jackie did it, and also so there were some people around us that were doing it, and they all went in for longer, and so it was like I was like already done, and I was kind of like already over it. I was like, all right, checked it off, like I did it, I jumped in, and then they did it, and they were all going in for longer. Also, my sister's pregnant, and she at first wasn't gonna do it, but then she ended up deciding to do it, and they were in for not that long, but still like a bit long, like a few minutes at least. And
wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, like at least like 1 to 4 minutes, I don't know. And
I think that's very good.
Yeah, and so other people were doing it, and I was like, I thought I was gonna die if I did that. I mean, not like, again, a little bit, but not really. But yes, it is that feeling that when you jump in and you're like and just like you've never felt it. So, and it's not just the breathing, it's also I guess the temp, obviously, because of the temperature. So there's the other body effect, whatever it feels like with the temperature and kind of the numbness or whatever. So
yeah, your body, your like skin will kind of go numb a little bit, but like it'll come back.
Yeah, but it was worth it, and I like to think that I had some kind of timeline jump.
It was worth it. My 1 second was worth it.
Shut up.
Sorry.
It was worth it. I don't know what was worth it, but it was worth it. You did it. So I was just proud. I was like, done. Got the and like Lake Louise itself, I don't know, my brother-in-law read this whole thing. He finds Brandon, he was on an episode of the podcast. He finds like all of the spiritual rabbit holes that he goes down, and the reading material that he finds is so interesting. Like, he's just a seeker, and he finds like all these super interesting texts and books of these people that like write all this spiritual channeled like lore of these things. And he had this whole thing that he had found about Lake Louise and how Archangel Michael there's a huge connection to Archangel Michael in Lake Louise, and that he has some like, etheric kingdom built inside of Lake Louise. And so it's just all this really cool stuff. So, we made the trip like very spiritual. And so I like to think that I, really kind of just absorb some of those high vibrational energies. And I also brought my favorite crystal to Canada, my citrine quartz. I don't have it here.
That's your favorite out of all your crystals?
It's my favorite crystal. Oh, wow. I don't know why exactly. It's like a nice like handheld size. I mean, it's not tiny. It's like about half the size of my palm. And
Alyssa has a lot of crystals for people. Like, I have like crystals, but like Alyssa has a lot of crystals and like big ones.
I have a lot of crystals. I love them all like my children, except this one is my favorite. I have a favorite child. Yeah, so my favorite crystal, it's like a beautiful quartz that has like a citrine color that kind of like bleeds into it a bit. And I think it's also near and dear to me because I got it like in the depth of my spiritual awakening, and I really tried to use it in the end of grad school. I tried to like really program it for my confidence. I don't know how well it worked, but
I think you can do that.
So I feel like it's near and dear to my heart for that reason too. But anyway, it I cleansed.
You brought it to Lake Louise.
Yeah, I cleansed it in the water in Lake Louise and in Lake Moraine. And yeah, felt like a little bit of a crazy person, but I was like, baptizing my crystal. Yes, it is recharged.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah, I was like, it is recharged in the sacred waters. So that was nice. And then, I mean, I mainly want to talk also about the ranch and finally going over to Lucia's and meeting Lucia and experiencing the energy. And
it's be interesting to hear you speak on that, because it's always kind of been from my perspective and my lens and my experience. So
so we went to So my sister knows Lucia for many years, and so we kind of had informal, like we ended up actually having a really nice like informal hangout day with her and
That's nice.
and her daughter and her daughter's kids, and we went to like some swimming spot. This was the day before, so usually once a month she has these observer sessions. So if anyone hasn't listened to some previous episodes, there's many episodes about this ranch, but she does this energy healing facilitated and assisted by horses that she has at the ranch. And once a month she does these a day of sessions, and you can either participate in the session or you can be an observer. And it's very powerful to even just be there because it's a unit. You're a unit. Everyone that's there is working together. And so there was one, and this was also kind of crazy divinely timed. The weekend, there was only one weekend that we were going to be there. And this was after we were in Banff for 2 weeks. And it ended up being a weekend that she had the session scheduled for Sunday. So Saturday we went, and I went to the ranch, and it was actually like so cool finally seeing the horses in person. I remember that was like really a high, like when we first drove into the ranch and I finally saw the horses, because I've attended a Zoom. I've attended on, you can also do this observer stuff on Zoom and session on Zoom. So I've attended the Zoom. I've seen it. I've heard you talk about the horses so much. And so I feel like I already know the horses a little bit, but now I know them individually better after being there. But it was really cool. I was like, I feel like they're like famous horses to me. I'm like, oh, the horses. And so like driving in and seeing the horses at first, and then going over and like petting them, or when they kind of a few of them, especially like Lyra, maybe because Lyra knows me from another life, which she actually does, maybe like when they kind of would walk over, I got this like really great video that was like so amazing of them like walking over and just petting them, and just it was so nice to meet them and everything. And so we had a day hanging out with Lucia like informally, which was nice. And then that night my sister, we were supposed to, it's so funny, the divine timing for my session was so interesting, because so me, my sister, and my brother-in-law were all planned to have sessions either potentially like privately or during the observer day. But then we were just gonna see, I think the observer day was booked, but she was going to try to squeeze us in. Anyway, we had to, just always, especially with Lucia, you're always just following the flow. You're just in the flow. There's no plan. There's no plans. You're not in charge of the plans. No. That's for sure. You're not in charge of anything. You have to very much relinquish all of your control when you're working with Lucia, or when you're, in her vortex, because she goes to the divine flow and she taps into it, and she puts her finger on the pulse, and she'll tell you what the divine wants at this moment, and you go with it. So we were all supposed to have sessions, or we thought that maybe all three of us have our sessions on that Saturday privately. And when I say privately, I mean outside of the observer day. And with the way that the day just unfolded with us going to this swimming spot instead, my sister had an amazing private session that night, and it was like right at the sunset time, and I was just really happy that she got that experience, because since she's also pregnant, so then the horses, it just, she had never been to the ranch, and she's known Lucia for many years via body talk training and everything, and I'm really glad that she got that experience. It was like a beautiful like sunset session, and I was up above the hill like watching it because I had to help watch the kids. But the horses were like all around her. The horses were all over her. She said that they were going over to her belly. She's due in December, so whatever that is. I don't pay attention to the weeks, whatever. So, tiny little bump, hardly anything. But she said the horses were like, oh, what's in there? And yeah, I guess just a few, like any other tidbits from Jackie's session was she had told me that, the horses did something with the baby, like they blessed the baby and like gave the baby like a new protector. I don't know if the protector was supposed to be like a horse. I forget that detail. I guess maybe not. I don't know. But gave the baby like a new, blessed the baby with a protector. And another thing that she told me that was cool in terms of the interaction with the horses was that at the end, one of the horses like nudged her head really hard, and Lucia was like, "Oh, that was a download. Like I just saw the zip file go in." So the horse just like put some download in her head. And yeah, so she had like a really powerful session, and I wish that I could have gone down and watched more of the details, but I had to help watch the kids. But it was very magical. And yeah, and so then with the divine timing, like I was going to go after that, didn't work out. Then that was maybe going to be squeezed in at the end of the observer day. Then that didn't work out. So I ended up coming back with Mikayla a few days later separately for a private session then, which I'll talk about. But mainly, you know, the observer day, like just to talk about that a bit, like it was so, you know, you're sitting around the corral or whatever, and there's a table in the center where people lay down, and she's in there and the horses are in there roaming around, and they pull the names from a hat for the order of sessions. And what I experienced from being there was that it has to do with the concept of like group consciousness. So whoever is getting sessions and whoever is there as an observer, it's extremely divinely orchestrated. Everything is for everyone, you know, like every message, or there's messages within other people's sessions that are for you. And it's just, you really have to trust the divine orchestration of this event. And and you know, you talk all about this in your experiences with the training, and how it's all about, you know, what Lucia really teaches or embodies too, with just this ranch existing and everything that happens there, is just the interconnectivity of all the consciousness and even the nature and the animals, and everything is connected, and it's all serving some unit function. And so what I found with like observing the sessions, and how, you know, of course, people that were just observing would get emotional. There's so many really, really emotional things, like things with people's like had lost like 2 children or something, like both to suicide, or like just these crazy things that like really, really traumatic things that people are talking about in there. And, what I found is that like we were all meant to, you know, like we were all releasing for each other. Like when people would cry, and it felt very much like, I don't even know how to describe it. It felt very much like, oh no, like you know, you definitely don't suppress the need to cry, or like other people would be crying at other people's people that are observing would be crying, at someone's session that's happening inside the corral, or that person is crying. Or when people get in there, or when this one person got in there for her session, she started crying uncontrollably, and she didn't even have a logic for it. She just was uncontrollably crying just because of the energy and a little bit from the previous session. And then for the other ones where I felt moved to cry, I felt like it was my responsibility as being there, being a part of that experience, for like, I felt like it was my responsibility to help release emotion for people that were in there. And to, you know, it felt so different. It felt like it was not separate from me, their stories and like their need to release. And I really kind of like leaned into it, you know, just being there. And like I didn't shy away from like letting myself like be really sad, or feel this person's sadness for their losses that they're in the process of healing. And, you know, so it was really unique in that sense, that it was like, it was my duty in a way, just by being there and being a part of that physical container. I was like, oh, I'm here to be a part of this group processing of emotions. And I will, and I did. And it was very powerful. And another thing that was super interesting, that was so funny, was So sometimes on Zoom, if there's a person on Zoom that has a session, they will have a surrogate. So Lucia will choose a surrogate, which is someone that best matches their energy, something like that, right? And
well, I think she just asks who's meant to be the surrogate.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that she chooses the surrogate.
right, yeah.
But
No,
I feel like
totally.
she intuitively feels into who the surrogate
Is supposed to be.
whoever the person is would like the surrogate to be, or whoever the spirit would like the surrogate to be in this circumstance.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about my brother-in-law Brandon's experience being a surrogate. So after lunch, my sister leaves with one of the kids, and then my niece Phoebe stays back with us, and she's 2, so she's still napping at times. And so me and Brandon are observing, and they decided to just keep Phoebe there and have Phoebe just nap on Brandon. So Phoebe's like napping, they're napping, and she's napping on him, and he's just watching the sessions and everything. And so all of a sudden it's time to pull a surrogate. And she goes, well, I don't know how you're going to do this, but Brandon, you're up. And so she said, you could bring the baby. And oh my God, Brandon's face was like, I thought that he was going to say no almost at first, because he has the sleep, and he's very much like, like when you're a parent, you're like, you try to, obviously he doesn't want to disturb the sleep, or he goes into that initial thought is like, oh God, like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so she's like, and I was like, oh, what's going to happen? I was like, oh, is he going to have to, and I was there so that, to help. And I was like, oh, is he going to have to pass her off to me? And Lucia was like, yeah, bring her in. And I was like, what? So Brandon goes in with the sleeping baby on him into the horse corral.
Oh, he
as
went
a
in
surrogate.
the horse corral?
Yes, he went in. I have pictures too. I thought I told you that. Yeah, no.
I didn't think that he was in.
Oh, yeah. He went in with the baby, and she stayed asleep on him basically the entire time. And she had already been sleeping for a while. Mm-hmm. And so divinely orchestrated, she did stay asleep on him. And then just a few interesting things about that, like the person with that session actually had an entity on them. So it kind of started with one of the horses getting like a little bit like huffy and stuff like that. And so Lucia had to kind of keep moving the horse away from, and I was a little bit confused, and it's confusing to kind of piece together all that's happening in these sessions, because you can hear some of it and some of it you can't. And I was a little bit confused at first. I was like, oh, Lucia's protecting the baby so that she doesn't wake up or whatever, which she also was. But it was like the horse Akash was being, he was kind of just like constantly like huffing around, or, not anything crazy dangerous, but it was like he wanted to like go near the baby or something. I don't know. And she kind of just kept pushing him away. And then
she will say, like, because we're in there, she's like, they're horses first, and then they're like the spirits that are in the horses. But like if they see an entity, they don't sometimes really like understand. They just want to get rid of it. And she's like, they will try to like pull it out with their front hooves or something. So like sometimes like that can happen. Ooh, so it's like, what does that look like if you're laying on the bed and a horse tries to grab an entity with its hoof? Like, I don't really want to be on the other end of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So anyway, so that was just a really interesting experience. And then at the end, she did this session. At the end, she asks if she does a session for the surrogate briefly, and she ended up also doing something for Phoebe, the baby. And this was really crazy, because then Leah, she does a light language.
Yeah.
So then I think Lucia must have asked, I don't know, something happened where then for the baby session, Lucia felt like Leah needed to do some light language healing. And so Leah came in to the corral and did all of this light language, and her light language is like, and she moves her hands and everything.
Yeah, it's very quick.
And so the baby was still sleeping at this point. Or when she did wake up, she was not fussy at all. She was actually just laying there calmly, which was also just crazy. It was just the energies obviously were very divine, because normally if she woke up, like, she could have just started crying and wanted to get out or something, like disrupted the whole thing. But she woke up and she's looked at everyone. She, she's on a table surrounded by horses and there's people staring at her, and she was just calmly like laying there. And so I think she was awake at this point after all the light language, like release from Phoebe. She starts crying, and it was actually just kind of crazy because of how much I knew that the crying release was from the light language and healing that was done. And it was just kind of crazy, like, seeing, because, I see her cry all the time. She's 2 years old. She cries all the time. She cries, but she cries when she drops something, and she cries when she, can't do something. And she's never just cried like that in a circumstance like that, where, she was just laying down, and instantly after the light language started crying, and then eventually stopped. Crazy. And so it was just so crazy to see it like that. Like, oh, that was 100% a release from this session. And it was like, whoa.
Same as the other lady that was crying, like, uncontrollably for, like, no reason, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that was just some really cool highlights from the Observer Day. And really the main thing was that I just felt like so much a part of the experience with everyone, and it felt so divine. And especially the things that were talked about too, and some of the things, like, about addiction in the morning, like, ended up inspiring me to switch my intent for my session a little bit. And when I came back and had my session, I ended up kind of, what was my intent? Yeah, it was pretty intense. So for my session, I had the intent around, I felt like a lot of what had been coming up for me recently was this, like, sort of like this parallel, like, with me and this version of me from a few years ago that was actually, like, in the peak of my, like, addiction phases and, like, Adderall use. And it was like, it was this energy of feeling like I missed the addiction, or, like, and I missed that version of me that had access to fleeting happiness, which I think makes sense in, from some perspectives, obviously. And it was like this whole thing of, I'm trying to go forward, and I've already recovered from this to a certain extent. And, I'm not trying to go back. And why am I looking back? And why am I feeling like I wish I could be that person again? And also sort of the intent was around feeling like, I was addicted to, like, a happy pill in a way. It was, it did give that effect, and feeling like it instilled some sort of program within me that emphasized this belief that happiness is separate from me, because there's some separation between me and feeling like a genuine happiness or a genuine joy or optimism. And because that's what it did, that's what it was in those times. I mean, in addition to, like, covering up a lot of self-doubt and all these things for school, but that's what the energy was that was coming up. And kind of just wanting to merge back with, like, this, wanting to, like, turn forward instead of looking back to missing this old version of myself in the peak of that. And also, like, like, body stuff too, because like, depending on the kind of thing that you're addicted to, you're gonna be lower, you're gonna be thinner sometimes. And feeling like why do it makes sense. I mean, I know why, like, obviously you can understand why, but how do I reconcile that And in terms of, you know, what came through and whatever healing happened, because we start the session by you just sit with Lucia and you talk about what your intent, what your agenda is, or what your intent for the session is. And I do feel like in terms of whatever healing and all the things that took place, in a way, I feel like I have to trust that. I spoke with her for about like 10 minutes or so about my intent and what I was looking to resolve or whatever. And I think there is an aspect, because the work that she does is so deeply quantum and so energetic, and it's very not tangible. Like one of these sessions, like after it's not like, oh yeah, thank God we like talked that out, or like, you know, a lot of times it's very different. It's very much like you're doing work on a deep energetic cellular level. Yeah. And you're clearing like things, and you're healing things. And so after you're done, it's not like a regular psychic session for an hour where you're like, oh great, I got all these answers from my spirit guides. It's like, no, what I found is I had to trust that I set that this intent and this is what I wanted to heal, and then whatever came through was divine and addressed that, you know. And a lot of these effects you don't feel until later, and it takes time for these things to sink in because it is so energetic. So basically what a few of the things that had come up in the session that were really interesting was it ended up being a lot about my brain, which actually makes sense because at least, like, you know, regarding the addiction stuff, like those like pharmaceuticals and those chemicals like that, they cause imbalances in your brain that take a long time to equilibrate back to normal. And that's part of why it took me a long period of time, or whatever period of time it did, to kind of, because it affects your brain chemistry. And so I do almost feel like that was part of why my session ended up being very like revolved around the brain. And so a few interesting things that she did. So what she was picking up on was that the two hemispheres of my brain were a bit closer, like magnetized closer together than they should be. And I don't know much about the brain science. Like, I don't know, maybe you know more from your respiratory background, but I really don't know much about the brain. So all that I know is that there's these two sides. And so she, you know, she saw that they were a bit closer together. And so she did this kind of separation or whatever.
I don't even remember that part.
Oh yeah?
I don't.
Yeah, she did this. That was like one of the brain things.
So I was there, but I was
also... yeah. Mikayla was there watching. You were also a little bit ailed.
Yeah, I was kind of like just floaty a little bit, but yeah. I mean, I do think I remember your session, but I don't remember that part, so I don't know.
Yeah. So she like pulled apart these hemispheres of my brain, and then immediately there's usually in this process of hers, she will kind of narrate that there will be some release associated. And so this is where the horses come in. And so the horses throughout the sessions are helping to release by peeing, pooping, or like rolling on the ground,
or yawning.
Yawning.
They yawn a
yawn,
lot, or
and they
stomping their feet, or
running around,
or whatever.
Yeah. So they're assisting in the release, and so it was so cool because just the way that like all the timing and everything is so cool. So she's like, okay, and I'm separating these hemispheres of the brain right now. And then I think it was Nova started walking, and she's like, and Nova's gonna and we're gonna have a release for that right now. And then 3, 2, 1, Nova starts peeing. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
And so it's just so cool, like how, like seeing it, you know, experiencing it, working and all of this stuff. And so she's like, okay, and there's gonna be a release right now. Bam. And then it goes, and I'm like, holy shit. She was right. Yeah. So that was cool. She did some stuff with the brain there. Another thing that came up with the brain was it was actually a past life that came through, and there was a bullet of sorts, lodged into my brain. We still don't understand how I didn't die from a bullet.
Yeah.
But what she said was that there was some bullet lodged in my brain, and of course I'm
from a past life.
this is from a past life. And so what that means is that there's just the energetic imprint is still in my system, because we retain our energetic blueprints carry over from different lives. And I think not every life. I think you only things that are maybe, you know, my belief is that only things that are relevant to this lifetime, you know, because many of our lifetimes have been very different. You're not going to carry around the energetic imprints of all of them. But if there are overlapping themes in different lifetimes, I think that's where the energetic blueprints carry over, especially if it's necessary for you to uncover and then clear or something or move through in this lifetime. And so she was picking up on this, and then she, you know, she saw the whole lifetime, or the important scene flash before her eyes, and
which
she
was
said,
why did you get shot?
Yeah, which was I was an inventor, so I was a man and I was an inventor, and I had some invention, and this other person like stole my invention. And I went to go confront him about it, and he shot me. And because, he was trying to steal it, or he was trying to steal it or did steal it or something.
Yeah.
And I went to confront him, and I was shot. And she said, though, that in this, and I'm trying to understand like if there's any more significance to this piece. She said that I didn't die from the bullet, which we don't really understand how, or I don't really know exactly how that works. But she said I died slowly over time from lead poisoning.
Yeah, I think it was probably just a fluke, but I also don't really understand how you didn't die from the gunshot to the head. But I guess sometimes that probably does happen. So it was probably just some type of fluke of wherever it hit you in the head. But
yeah. So she removed that, and I also just thought that energy was really interesting I don't know where that would repeat itself here, of like stealing the idea. I don't know. I need to think on it a little more to see like if that like consciousness I think is relevant to me in this lifetime of having something and then someone stealing it, or if there's something like unresolved from that. But so she removed the lead and whatever, and put this golden nectar into my brain, and kind of did some healing there, and I got some upgrades there. And there was another part where she saw, she said that she saw like all these geometrical shapes. And didn't you say that you saw that too at the same time? I don't know if it was the part with the brain, but there was at some point during the sessions she said that she saw like all of these shapes like go into me.
I just seen it like kind of like all around you, I think, like in my third eye. But that kind of is just happening for me now, where I'm just like,
this is a norm.
I'm just like, not the shapes all the time, but if we're doing a session or something, I just see stuff.
So that was cool. And then another thing, I mean, it came up for me to get my thyroid checked, which I actually just did yesterday. I just got the blood work and everything, finally like made a doctor's appointment and did that. So that was another thing. But the last thing that I want to mention was really interesting. It was kind of random. It was like she was asking me about what my PhD was in, or she was like, remind me what your PhD is in again. And I said astrophysics, and she was being quiet. She was kind of just like channeling some things or whatever. And she said, I almost feel like you put secret codes or encoded your PhD papers with other meanings that are for a future version of you. And I'm paraphrasing, but she said, because she started this saying like, do you know what a didactic memory is, or something like that, where the concept has to do with reading between the lines, where you read something and there's another hidden meaning between the lines. And she said, I feel like, and so this was super quantum. This is like future me future me, like an aspect of future me being present at the time that I'm writing my thesis papers or writing my research papers in grad school, encoding a secret message for a future version of me, such that when I go back and read it at a future time, maybe I will understand it in a different way, or I will, there's some kind of like code in there for me, or a secret like meaning. And it's interesting because I've actually had that thought before, and so it definitely resonated, and it definitely, just like on another perspective, it makes sense if you think of it from like, I do think there's more that I'm going to discover in this lifetime about the spirituality of astrophysics. So of course, from one perspective, when I go back, my thesis was on black holes and how black holes grow. So from another perspective, in 10 years, when I read that again, it probably will have an entirely different meaning that I didn't know then, but that I know now. Yeah. And I think that could be applied to a lot of things. But there definitely was kind of this like extra factor of like me communicating with me, very interstellar of me. And yeah, so that was really cool. It definitely made me think a lot. So yeah, it was great. And I think, yeah, and that's what I mean in terms of like, whatever came through, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, this is why you miss your old self, and this is how you get back, or whatever. This is how you move forward. The one there, in terms of like my body or addiction stuff, like there was something that came up that she said that really kind of struck a chord with me. She said, when you were, in the addiction stuff, you were hiding behind your books, and now you're hiding behind your body. Mm-hmm. And that really was interesting to me, and definitely gave me something to think about. So, it was addressed there, but in terms of, yeah, I just trust that whatever came through and whatever kind of psychic surgery that she did was speaking to what I wanted my agenda to be for the session. And yeah, it was really cool. It was very quantum, very just etheric psychic surgery and all this stuff. And it was really interesting. So yeah, and it was nice having the horses around me. Nothing major. In terms of, there was the one release, and nothing major in terms of like any other, because sometimes the horses are more involved in sessions than other times. Sometimes they're doing like really interesting things or like nudging to a certain body part. Wasn't necessarily anything like that, but it was so cool to finally like be laying down and have them like looking over at me. Like there was one point where the two of them, there was almost like making like a little heart shape, like two of them were like right over me, and I was just like I just love them. They're just so majestic and great. So yeah, so that's a bit about my experience at the ranch, and it was awesome. It was just definitely can understand like just the indescribable thing, and it was just really feeling that like group consciousness. Yeah. And oh yeah, one other thing that I just wanted to mention quickly before we wrap. I think I'll talk about the planet stuff next week.
Yeah, we don't have time.
Instead,
I mean,
yeah, we don't have time.
Isn't your thing gonna start soon?
Yeah, no, we don't have time. I'll talk about planet stuff next week. And
what did I say?
Yeah, I know. We talked about the meaning of life for the first 20 minutes.
Well, yeah.
No, but that was good. Yeah. That was deep. So this is the other thing about just why, like, in Lucia's energy field, or just in this whole, we're all mirrors for each other.
Yep.
And that's what's so powerful about being at this observer day and this session. And so me and Jackie and Brandon and the two kids, we were all traveling together, and we showed up to the ranch together, and we're all a collective, we're all a consciousness unit ourselves. The day that we got to the ranch, the Saturday before the observer session, we all had these random injuries that happened like right before we got there. Well, I had really bad period cramps right before we left. My niece Cece, who's 4, like injured her foot on the trampoline at the Airbnb, and then Jackie burned her hand on like a pot of boiling water or something. And this was like within the hour before we left for Lucia's. And so we all had these random injuries. When we're at the swimming spot, we're talking about it, and Lucia points out that it's an inverse. Okay, the location, my niece hurt her foot on like the ball of her foot, right by the toe, under the toe. And then where Jackie burned her hand was like the ball of the hand, and on the opposite side or something like that. And so basically they're pointing out that it was like an opposite mirror reflection of their injuries. And then it was like this other thing that it was divinely timed, that actually like Lucia at the swimming place, like Lucia almost sort of did a session on my niece or like, you know, a little bit of like a tap in healing on my niece for her foot. And it was just this whole thing of like, everyone had these different injuries that were all mirroring each other. And it was just this whole like collective thing that was so interesting. And it was like, whoa. And so I just really got to experience like the crazy, whatever vortex of energy and synchronicities and reflections that happen when you are really kind of tapped in like that, or just in an, you know, interesting environment. So yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention. It was just like this, you know, all of this stuff happened like right before we left, and the mirrors of each other, and it was just pretty cool. So yeah,
I'm happy you're able to come here and have that experience in the physical.
Yeah, same. And I'll definitely be back, and we're calling in me going to the next training.
Yes.
In the spring.
Yes.
2024, baby.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wrap. That was a great episode, though.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for being here. If you've gotten here, we really appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we do really appreciate you.
If you have questions or a topics suggestion requests, please DM them to us at the Orphic podcast. Wanted to mention that. We probably are going to do some sort of Q&A soon. Yeah, we've been talking about that. We've been talking about like opening up something for questions, because there is another person that listens that I know that she said to me that she has like all these questions. Erica, hey, she's probably listening. And so yeah, we want to open a floor for like questions that arise and all these things, and we might like keep some kind of question box open for a period of time. So keep an eye out for that, and follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. And follow us on our YouTube too. And same with our Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please comment and leave us a review. It helps us out a lot as we just begin to grow our little baby podcast and expand it into more and more. So if you get value from this, we hope that someone else does too. So yeah, please share it and leave us a review.
Yes, definitely. And follow me on Instagram at interdimensional.astrophysics.
And me at Mariposa Moonchild on Instagram.
Yep. All right. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.